everyone, here I am going to talk about the anatomy of medial layer. This section includes the features of medial layer, its boundaries, its contents and nerves related to medial layer. Here this is the frontal view of this right here. The ear is divided into externally, this is the external layer, this part is the medial layer, then this is the inner ear. Coming to the features of this medial layer, we can see laterally there is the tympanic membrane. Medially, this is the medial wall of the medial ear, which separates this medial ear from this inner ear. There you can see a prominence there. This is the promontory. This is due to the first turn of the cochlea of this inner ear. This one is the roof. Roof is formed by this petrous part of the temporal bone. So this is the temporal bone. Here the ear is housed in this temporal bone. Then the floor of this medial ear. Here this part is the floor. The anterior of this medial ear is released to this eustachian tube or the pharyngotympanic tube, which connects this medial ear to this nasopharynx. So this medial ear here, it looks like a rectangular boss, and also it is an air-filled region. Here it lies medial to this tympanic membrane and lateral to this promontory. Okay. Then here this is the divisions of this medial ear. Here this is the enlarged view of the medial ear. This is the laterally, you can see the medial surface of the tympanic membrane. Medially, this is the medial wall of the medial ear, which separates it from the inner ear. Then this is the upper end of this tympanic membrane. A line goes towards medially. The part above this is called the epitympanum. Epitympanum. Then from the lower of this tympanic membrane, a line goes towards medially, this imaginary line. The part below this here, this is the hypotympanum. The middle part, this is the mesotympanum. So this mesotympanum and this hypotympanum forms this tympanic cavity. The epitympanum is also named as the epitympanic recess. Okay. Coming to this dimensions, the anteroposterior, from this anterior to posterior, that length is the 16 millimeters. The vertical dimension, that is the vertical dimension, that is 15 millimeters. Then the transverse diameter here, this that forms the transverse, it is lower here in the middle. It ranges from 2 to 6 millimeters. Okay. These are the dimensions of this medial layer. Then the divisions here, that is the boundaries of this medial layer, which are the walls of this medial layer. Already told its shape is like a rectangular box. So in the frontal view, this is the lateral wall. Here this is the medial wall. These are the crescent shaped disc. Here we will get the roof. Then here this is the floor of this medial layer. Then this is the roof. Here this forms the posterior wall. Here this is the lateral wall. See, this is the lateral wall. This is the posterior wall. See, this is the roof. This is the lateral wall. This is the anterior wall. This one is the medial wall. This is the floor. Okay. So when we cuts and opens this lateral wall, okay, so the lateral wall is opened. You can directly see this medial wall. See, this is the medial wall. Then this is the anterior wall. See here, this is the anterior wall. See, this is the posterior wall. See, this is the posterior wall here. This forms the roof. Here, this is the roof. This one is the floor. See here, this is the floor. So these are the walls of this medial layer. Here in the second figure, we can see that in the frontal view, this is the lateral wall. This one is the medial wall. This is the roof and floor, shaped like a rectangular box. See, this is the floor here. This is the lateral wall. See, this is the medial. This forms the roof. Here, this is the posteriorly. There is the posterior wall. The anterior wall, that is removed. Then here, this is the lateral wall. Here this is the medial wall. When we take a section like this, a parasagittal section, then it keeps this lateral wall towards laterally and then medial wall towards medially, when we can better appreciate the features over this lateral and medial wall. Here this is the lateral wall, that is the medial view of the lateral wall. This is the anterior aspect. Here you can see this is the posterior aspect. Okay, see this is the roof, this forms the floor. You can see this is the medial surface of the tympanic membrane there. There you can see the attachment here, the handle of the malleus attached. This is the malleus, this is the ingus, this part is the epitympanic recess. Okay. Then posterior wall, you can see this nerve is the facial nerve. It is providing a branch there. This is the coda tympani. It is going to this lateral wall. In the anterior of this lateral wall, you can see this muscle. This is the timsa tympani muscle, which is attaching to this handle of this malleus. Okay. Then coming to the features of this ear ossicles here, those are this malleus, ingus, and the stapes. The parts of the malleus, this rounded part, this is head. The constrictor part here, this is neck. It has process. This is the anterior process, lateral process. This is the handle of this malleus. Then here this is the ingus. This part is the body. This is the short process. This is the long process. Then stapes. You can see this is the foot plate of the stapes. It is an anterior crus. This is the posterior crus. And also you can see there is a this part, rounded part is a head. The constricted part here, that is the neck. In the frontal view here, this is the malleus head. This is the handle. This one is the anterior process. This is the lateral process. This is the ingus body. This is the short process. This is the long process. So this malleus, that is head, handle is attaching to this handle and process is attaching to this medial surface of this tympanic membrane, which you can see over this lateral wall. Then see the stapes here. Stapes here, the foot plate is attaching to this medial wall of this middle ear here. Then in relates to this bones, we can see two muscles are there. This is the tensor tympani is coming and is attaching to the handle. You can see this smallest muscle, this is the stapedius, is coming from this pyramid of this part, this projection of this tympanic cavity towards here, towards posteriorly, in this attaching this neck of this stapes. And also ligaments are there superiorly, anteriorly, and posteriorly from this ossicles to this bony margins, which stabilizes here this ear ossicles. Then, so that's about the features of this lateral wall of this medial ear. Then you can see this is the medial wall. This is the anterior aspect, parasagittal view of this medial wall, anterior aspect. This is the posterior. Here you can see this is the roof. Here this is the floor. Okay, there you can see in this medial wall there is a prominence there. This is the promontory of this inner ear. Okay, so this promontory, this is the promontory is named in this medial wall of this medial ear. Okay, this promontory is due to actually the first turn of this cochlea of this inner ear forms this projection. That projection is named as this promontory. Then in the posterior of this promontory, there you can see a round depression here. This is the round window here. This is a round window. Then above the promontory, you can see this stapes there. Here comes the foot plate of the stapes. There it leads to their depression, oval depression, that is called the oval window here. Here we'll get this one is the oval window. Here this is the round window. Then, so this round window is covered by a fibrous membrane that is called the secondary tympanic membrane there. Then oval window here is also there is covered by there is a fibrous membrane. Actually what is happening here is the vibrations which contacts the tympanic membrane which enters the middle ear through the ossicles. That time there will be the vibration of this round window which sends this sound waves towards the inner ear through the oval window. Okay, so the middle ear is functioning as an acoustic transformer which amplifies the sound waves before they move into the inner ear. Okay, then here Here also the features of this middle ear. You can see this projection here. This is the promontory of this medial wall. Then you can see the posterior medially. Then there is the round window. Then above the promontory you can see this depression here. This is the oval window. Here there is the stapes bone, can see. In the neck of the stapes posteriorly, there you can see a muscle attaches here. This is the stapedius muscle. Here this projection here, this is the pyramid. You can see in the posterior medial wall of the middle ear. This is the pyramid of the tympanic cavity, this projection. From there the stapedius muscle is coming and is attaching to this neck of the stapes posteriorly. Okay. So these are the important features over this medial wall. Then here there is the roof of this middle ear. This part is the roof. We can see this is the lateral wall. Here we get this the medial wall. This part is the roof of this middle ear. Here this is the roof, and the roof is formed by this. That part is the tegmen tympani of this petrous part of the temporal bone. Here in the skull lateral view, you can see this is the temporal bone. This is the temporal bone. Here you can see this opening here. This is the external acoustic meatus. Here this is the external acoustic meatus. That's the part of the external ear. This is the tympanic part of this temporal bone. Here you can see this is the cranial cavity. This is the middle cranial fossa here. Here you can see this is the petrous part of this temporal bone. Here this is the petrous part. Then here this part here this it relates to this. This is the tegmen tympani. This part is the tegmen tympani. This tegmen tympani forms the roof of this middle ear. See, this is the anterior of this petrous part. Here you can see there is towards medial surface here there is an opening here. This foramen here. This is this foramen. That is the internal acoustic meatus or the internal auditory meatus. This is the lateral view of the temporal bone. Here you can see this is the medial view of the temporal bone. This part is the petrous part of this temporal bone. There you can see here this is the tegmen tympani. This is the internal auditory meatus or the acoustic meatus, through which the facial nerve and the vestibulocochlear nerve along with the labyrinthine artery endorse to this ear. Okay. Then that's about this roof. Here you can see the floor of this middle ear. This forms the floor. See in the medial view, this is a medial view. Here you can see this is a lateral view. Here this part forms the floor. Okay, so the floor is relates to one vein. This vein is the internal jugular vein. So this internal jugular vein, see here, it is in one fossa. This is the jugular fossa. See, this is vein in this jugular fossa. See, this is the vein. Then this is a part of the bone which separates from this tympanic cavity. This is a small part of the bone that is a part of this temporal bone which separates it from this tympanic cavity, and also its floor is released to this internal jugular vein. Okay. Then comes to this anterior wall. Here is the anterior wall. See, this is the anterior aspect, anterior wall. This is the posterior wall. Here this is the roof. Here this is the floor. So anterior wall is released to one artery here. This is the internal carotid artery, is in the carotid canal. So the internal carotid artery which enters into this middle cranial fossa through this here, through the carotid canal. Okay. Then see here, this is the posterior wall of this carotid canal that forms the anterior wall of this middle ear. Above this bony part you can see two openings there. Superiorly, this is the opening for this passage of this tensor tympani muscle. Inferiorly, you can see this one is the auditory tube. Okay, here this is the pharyngotympanic tube or this eustachian tube. Okay, here this opening is for the part of the bone. Here you can see here the between this superior opening and this one inferior opening, there is a long part of bone there which is projecting towards this tympanic cavity. This is called the processus cochleariformis, that is called the processus cochleariformis. Okay, this bony part. Then here in the posterior wall, you can see there is the facial nerve is there, oblique and vertical part of the facial nerve is there. From this facial nerve, there is giving a great branch there. This is the greater petrosal nerve. This is going to the roof of this medial. Okay, this greater petrosal nerve. So here the anterior wall, here it relates to this posterior wall of the carotid canal, then two openings, superior opening for the passage of the tensor tympani muscle, inferior opening, that is the eustachian tube. Then between these two openings, this bony projection towards the tympanic cavity, that is called the processus cochleariformis. Okay. Then comes here, that is the posterior wall. Here, this is the posterior wall. This is the anterior wall. This one is the floor. This is the roof. Okay. So posterior wall, you can see these are the mastoid air cells are there in this temporal bone. This one, this air-filled space here, this is the mastoid antrum. Then this part is the epitympanic recess. Okay. This is the editus, entrance towards this mastoid antrum from this epitympanic recess. Okay. Here you can see in this figure, this is the tympanic cavity. Here this is the epitympanic recess. Here this is epitympanic recess. These are the mastoid air cells in the posterior wall. This is the mastoid antrum here, that is air-filled space there. Then this is the editus to the mastoid antrum. Okay. So this mastoid antrum, which communicates posteriorly with this mastoid air cells and anteriorly with this epitympanic recess to this editus to this mastoid antrum, or this one, that is the entrance. Editus or this entrance. Okay. So this mastoid antrum, which acts as a buffer system, which releases air into this tympanic cavity when the pressure is too low. Okay. And also here in this posterior wall, here this is the epitympanic recess. There you can see there is a prominence of this lateral semicircular canal there. Then also this is the prominence of this facial nerve. This is the oblique course of this facial nerve. This is the vertical course of this facial nerve. So this is the internal auditory meatus or acoustic meatus through which the facial nerve is entering to this ear, the medial ear. This is the oblique course, this is the vertical course, and it exits to the exterior of the skull by means of this through the stylomastoid foramen. Okay. Here, posterior wall, you can see the facial nerves is also there. Then prominence of this lateral semicircular canal. Okay. Then coming to the relation of the nerves with this medial ear. See here, this is the anterior aspect, this posterior, this is the roof here, this one is the floor, this one is the tympanic cavity here. So here, this is the internal carotid artery. There is the sympathetic plexus there, okay, sympathetic plexus of this nerve there. From there, this carotico-tympanic nerve, see, this is the carotico-tympanic nerve is coming. So this anterior wall is related to this carotico-tympanic nerve and this internal carotid artery. This carotico-tympanic nerve into this tympanic cavity is going. Then see, this is the floor. Floor is related to here, one nerve is there. This is the glossopharyngeal nerve here. This is the ninth cranial nerve. From there, it is providing here, you can see here, the glossopharyngeal. It is providing a tympanic branch that is also entering to this tympanic cavity and forms here a tympanic plexus with this carotico-tympanic nerve here. So here, this is the tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve. This is the caroticotympanic nerve from the sympathetic plexus. Form here a plexus here in the tympanic cavity here. This plexus is called the tympanic plexus. From there, there is the lesser petrosal nerve is coming. See this lesser petrosal nerve. See the facial nerve is there. From there, there is branch there. This is the greater petrosal nerve. So greater petrosal and lesser petrosal nerve is relates to this roof of this tympanic cavity. Then in the posterior wall, here the posterior wall, it relates to this facial nerve. See the facial nerve. See, it is providing a branch here. This is the coda tympani nerve that is relates to this lateral wall. Okay. So anterior wall here, it relates to this caroticotympanic nerve and this internal jugular. This is the internal carotid artery. Then floor is relates to this tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve, and here we get one vein, that is the internal jugular vein. The posterior wall here, it relates to this facial nerve. Then roof is relates to this greater petrosal and lesser petrosal nerves. The lateral wall of this medial, that is relates to here, this is the coda tympani nerve. Okay. So that's about this nerves in relation with this medial. Then the contents of this medial, here we already discussed actually. Here you can see this is the ossicles, you can see this is ear ossicles, this is the malleus, ingus, stapes there. There you can see the muscles. This is the tensor tympani muscle from this bony and cartilaginous part of this auditory tube or the eustachian tube, and is attached to this handle of this malleus. Okay, when the muscle contracts, which pulls this tympanic membrane towards medially, that is due to that there is the convexity of this tympanic membrane, you can see over this medial surface. It is convex, okay, due to the pull of this tensor tympani muscle here. Then also here in relates with the stapes, you can see there is a small muscle there. This is the stapedius muscle. From here pyramid, it is going towards the posterior of the neck of the stapes. Okay, then can see this ligaments which stabilizes this ear ossicles. Okay, then this nerves which forms the contents of this media. So that's all about this media. Hope you understood. Okay, here is the question. You can describe the boundaries and contents of the media. It consists of 6 walls. There is the roof, floor, anterior wall, posterior wall, then medial wall, lateral wall. Which are the structures you are seeing in these walls? Okay, that's all. Thank you.